Hey, welcome to Speechless. We're glad to have you here today. And we got another very, very interesting show. I've been spending the week down at the Legislature and in some court cases last week watching that were very interesting, but they kind of all relate to each other. So what our main subjects are going to be today are the City of Grant had a city council fiasco meeting again. And I hope everybody on that city council starts to learn their lessons because nobody knows the rules of procedure there. And it's very, very troubling because they're not passing things they think they're passing. So we'll get into that coming up a little. I got some video from that meeting that's pretty interesting. And actually there's too much. I'd have to do 3 weeks worth of shows on that. But so we're going to talk about legislative family law bills that are going through the legislature, that some have had hearings, some will be having hearings. But that's, and then I'll be talking about what I was promoting down at the legislature, basically dealing with Judge Carolyn Lennon of Scott County, 1st Judicial District, who never signed her oath of office until 3 years, 2 weeks later when she was confronted on it. But it still is in office, and by the law, something's wrong, so something needs to be fixed. And they're actually going to start looking at some things. So I'll tell you that story in a bit. I'm going to look at some of the Super Bowl commercials, particular ones, especially the ones dealing with fathers. I thought they were fantastic commercials. And just some of the insights in what these commercials are saying and what it means for fathers and children and for mothers and parents in general. But before we get into that, I want to talk about a couple, an event coming up, and that's a Common Core meeting. So I forgot to tell you the graphic number, but it's the I think number 8 on the graphic. It's either 8 or 9 or 7. I'm not real positive. There it is. Tomorrow night, Friday, February 6th at 7 p.m., there is a open public meeting on the case against Common Core national standards. Now, that's all one title, but I just kind of want to emphasize this is a case against Common Core, but the big reason is, for me, is that national standards. We should not have national standards. That's not how we're made to be. And national standards will dumb us down. It will stop ingenuity. It will stop the excellence in education, and it need not happen, and it's got to stop. And when you got guys like former Governor Bush of Florida vying for the presidency, pushing Common Core, we got a problem. And anybody else, believe me, there's plenty of other people pushing Common Core, but the issue is a national standard. Now, this isn't being done and pushed by governors. Well, it is being pushed by governors and state governors, but it's because of corporations that are pushing it, like the Bill Gates Foundation and other large corporate foundations and other corporations that want to nationalize. Corporations are, in a sense, a nationalized group. And, our Constitution says you get too large, you get a monopoly, you got to break up for obvious reasons, because then the corporation ends up being a nation in and of itself, and then the rights are limited, and so that's why we have monopolies broken up to encourage competition and keep competition going, so a monopoly just doesn't drown somebody out. But that's what's happening. That's what would happen with the Common Core national curriculum. So the meeting is at Grace Church, Eden Prairie, 9301 Eden Prairie Road, Eden Prairie, Minnesota. It's at 7 p.m. Dr. Duke Pesta, and I need my phone out here. I left that out here. He'll be one of the presenters. He'll be presenting at this meeting at the big thing, but then they're going to have breakouts where you can learn about parental involvement in the whole situation. Let me find some of my stuff here. All right, Dr. Pesta, let's just find out a little bit of his. Duke Pesta received his M.A. in Renaissance Literature from John Carroll University and his Ph.D. in Shakespeare and Renaissance Literature from Purdue University. He has taught at major research institutions and small liberal arts colleges and has been active in education reform, developing and implementing an elective Bible course that is currently available for public high school students in Texas. What do I need this for? Oh, okay. So a lot of history back there. He's currently professor of English at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, and the academic director of Freedom Project Education. So he'll be the main presenter, and in this event, he'll be talking about the origin and dangers of Common Core scheme. All of this has been revealed, and people are beginning to fight back on behalf of their children. This national testing will be in a breakout session about this over-testing that's going on with our children. And that's being done at the government level. And currently, with this down at the legislature now, they're talking about corporations or the government not keeping track of adult data. Well, what's happening in our schools with all this testing, they're keeping track of what the kids are saying and doing. And it just shouldn't be. It's like a prison sentence for the kids for the rest of their life, and they're growing up trying to figure out their way through life, and these things shouldn't be. And actually, it's meant to keep track of the parents. That's the big thing there. If a kid says something, well, that's coming from the parent, so let's go get the parent. Also, this data sourcing, just excessive information being collected on children. It's a bad thing. And then parental involvement. One of the breakout sessions, you as a parent, what do you do? How do you handle this situation? How do you opt your kids out of testing? What rights do you have in dealing with your own children's education? And I'm just going to bring this up briefly. I'm sure it won't be discussed here, but I did talk to a legislature this week, and we will be introducing a bill based off the parentalrights.org U.S. constitutional amendment that would make parental rights a fundamental right to raise your children in the education upbringing of your choice, not the state's choice. And so instead of having a constitutional amendment for Minnesota or the United States, the effort here is to bring it into statutes in Minnesota that would give us those parental rights, because you don't have them. You may think you do, you don't. And this will help in ensuring that parents have a say over their own children's education and the information their children receive. So anyway, Friday night, let's bring that graphic up one more time. Tomorrow night, Friday, February 6th at 7 p.m. Down at Grace Church, Eden Prairie, you'll be getting that getting the information with Dr. Duke Pesta. So I think it will be a good meeting. I will be, they're allowing me to film it, so I will be having clips on that next week on the show. Hopefully, I'll have time to get all that done. So, all right. Another interesting thing I did this week that was really, really enjoyable is I met with a group of elders, senior citizens, and the purpose of that group, which was amazing that this was happening, was how they could engage the governmental process. What they were seeing was that our country, our education system, is corrupting our children. And they were getting hints of that, and they didn't know what to do. I'm telling you, the average age of this group was over 85. Okay? Over 85. So I was told. I didn't think they were, but that's what I was told, so okay, I'm going to go with that. They wanted to know what the problem was and how they could help. Because what they were seeing is they've raised their children. They've seen some of the problems with the system, the school systems with the children. Not so much, because their children are in their, 60s and 70s. But what they're seeing is with their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And they want to help preserve the liberties that we had. And so I explained to them that process and and presented some of the problems so that they see a bigger issue that they need to engage. And they have to. And not only that, they need to bring their children and great-grandchildren along this system. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, they need to engage that system. So I basically talked about you need to go to your precinct caucus because that's where you decide who your choices are to elect. And believe me, the Democrat Party you can wash off as far as having any family values. I said that wrong. Any moral values relating to how families are to be structured. We do have a significant number of Democrats in the House that are trying to reform the divorce custody laws. And we're going to talk about on the show today because there are going to be a number, 17 different bills coming through reforming divorce custody laws. So there are people that want good parents to remain in the lives of their children. So, but the Republican Party is having an internal struggle in this, too. So I'm saying, hey, if you're having these values, the best party to go to is the Republican Party, and you need to have your voice heard, and you need to get other people your age and your family there, too. And for these people, they're you're only as old as you think, and that was their philosophy. They got to that meeting. If they can get to that meeting, which is larger than a lot of precinct caucuses, they can get to their precinct caucus. So I got to tell my story, how I found out about the courts. It was a fun time, and I would encourage all of you, go to your precinct caucuses because that's where you choose who runs for office, and you have a lot of say then. Okay, well, speaking of families, I was watching the Super Bowl. Of course, I'm a Seattle fan. I grew up in Spokane, Washington. Enjoy the game. I don't worship the game. I love the dynamics, the dance that goes on, and it was a fantastic game. It was one of the best Super Bowls I think ever played, and the intensity and then the final interception of that game was just unbelievable. What game? The Super Bowl against Seattle and my producers. They don't. Yeah, what game? One of them. One of the producers. They're all pointing fingers in the back room there, trying to blame each other. Seattle versus the Patriots, and I'll tell you what, the Patriots were the better team that game. Not because they won and how they won. What was interesting in that game. And just as a little sidelight, because we don't talk about sports very much, but the Patriots exploited the weakness of Seattle. And unfortunately, it was the one weakness they had because one of their defensive backs got an injury, and Seattle went after that defensive back replacement over and over and over again, and they couldn't do it against the starter that ended up getting injured. And that's why they won, which says a lot about weaknesses, about attacking weaknesses, and why we have to be strong, and everybody needs to be strong. Otherwise, we collapse. We collapse from the inside, and of course, that's what one famous communist leader will destroy America from the inside, and that's what's happening. And it's a tough game. It's definitely a tough deal. Of course, Ben Franklin said that politics is the only game for adults. That's Ben Franklin. But remember, politics is a word to get people not to play the game. It's really governmental process. Governmental process is the only game for adults. Or he may have said it, it's only a game for adults. You know, you got to be tough, you got to be strong, you got to stick with it. And of course, that's what you see Obama doing. I mean, he is a tough, strong guy. He doesn't care what anybody else thinks. He's going to do what he wants. Say what you want to say. I'm doing what I want to do. You know, the Constitution, who cares? Anyway, but let's get back to the really reason I was talking about the Super Bowl, because this show is about families. It's kind of the tie-in here about families, what you as an individual are facing, you as an individual and your children are facing, and then how it affects our lives in all aspects of our lives, from education to the culture with Super Bowl ads to down to the legislature and what they're trying to accomplish. So in the Super Bowl, of course, they have the Super Bowl commercials, and I was stunned by the commercials they had that were talking about fatherhood and the importance of a father in the family. And they weren't talking about it, they were showing it. And they showed it in a number of different ways. So I don't care which video you have. Once you play one video here, if it's actually, let's do the race car one first. I believe that's the Nissan one. And this is for educational purposes, but I want you to notice something in this commercial. The son is eating breakfast, and there's a box of Cheerios, and I think that one of the race cars was a Cheerios race car. I'm not positive, but on the race car issue, because I just saw it quickly and didn't have time to check, but the son was eating Cheerios breakfast cereal. I'll point out why that was an interesting thing after the commercial. So let's watch this commercial and learn some things.
Tried to ride just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking for I knew it. And as it grew, he'd say, I'm gonna be like you, Dad. You know I'm gonna be like you. And the cats in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy, big man. When you come home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then. My son turned 10 just the other day. He said, thanks for the ball, Dad, come on, let's play. Can you teach me to throw? I said, not today, I got a lot to do. He said, that's okay. And then walked away with a smile like a dip and said, I'm gonna be like him. Yeah, you know I'm gonna be like him.
Yeah, that was a really good commercial. Of course, that song was actually somewhat of a negative song when it was written, because it was a father who wasn't spending time with his son. And here, this commercial kind of changed it around. The son missing the son, but the way I saw that son missing the father, but the way I saw that commercial, when you have the son bringing a helmet to his dad, it was about safety. The father having his son buckle up, and the concept of having a safe car to be in, and of course the safety built into the race cars that are there now. Although it's still very dangerous, but they just have a lot of safety things so that these racers can go home to their family. It was a very good commercial in that regard, and just that father-son relationship and the imitation of a son raising his hand when his dad raised his hand, and the mother actually protecting the son when the accident took place. That risk, safety dimension that goes on in a husband-wife relationship with children. That's what I just was fantastic, and you just don't see that recognition of the importance of fathers in Hollywood. And actually, this really didn't come out of Hollywood. This came out of a car commercial, and actually a couple car commercials stepped up to the plate in this. Most of Hollywood is trying to bash dads, make them look stupid, and of course, so many fathers are great fathers, and there's such a pressure in order to raise women up. Unfortunately, the feminist movement, in order to raise women up, is trying to destroy fathers in order to make them look better, and it just shouldn't be that way. Women need to be raised up because they have value in the fact that they're human, just like men do. There shouldn't be this trying to devalue either one of them. Or making one or the other superior than the other. It just shouldn't happen. Now, the interesting thing about the Cheerios, and of course I couldn't see the car, but you saw the Cheerios bowl there. Now, if you've ever seen any other commercial, or a lot of these commercials that Cheerios puts out, in which I've recognized them as being the most father-friendly commercial company in relationship to their commercials around, they have always done that. So I don't know if that's why Cheerios was in there and saying, hey, we'll help you, Nissan, give you a little sponsor. We'll put our Cheerios cereal in a commercial. And then I think that car, just right after that breakfast scene, was a Cheerios car, but it went too fast. I couldn't tell. It may not be. But it's just an interesting dynamic that was there, because product placement in commercials is a big deal. And Cheerios was there, and they've been there in the past with their great ads about a healthy heart, and children wanted to see their dads being healthy and giving them Cheerios so that they would be healthy. That was fun. Well, let's watch a next commercial. It doesn't matter which one. We'll comment after that.
Being a dad is more than being a father. It's a choice. A choice to get hurt rather than to hurt. To be bold when others are scared. A choice that says you'll be there. To show them right from wrong by your words and by your actions. Being a dad is more than being a father. It's a commitment, one that will make a wonderful human being who will make their own choices someday.
Out of handcuffed lightning.
All right, that's that ad was about protection. A father protecting, going out of the way, taking the risks to of potentially being injured in protecting his children. And of course, that's what a vast majority of fathers do. And so I thought, another good commercial to uplift fathers. And give guidance to their kids about safety issue, protection issues, what's right, what's wrong, being there to rescue when your children finally finally see the errors of their ways in trying to express themselves, and the letdown that happens in so many children that do go down the wrong path, and being there to pick them up. It was a great commercial. All right, let's show the next one here.
Dove Men Plus Care. Care.
Great commercial by Dove, caring about your children. And of course, you see an aspect of fathers, and the studies have shown that it's the fathers who build empathy into their children. It's the fathers, not that mothers don't, but typically mothers have played the role of safety. You know, so you saw that child hanging, in the air by his arms and calling out for his dad. Well, the child wanted to take the risk, but he wanted his, because obviously he was up there. Dad didn't force him there. But children like to take that risk, but they want to know they're safe in that. And of course, the mother would say, don't be that far away from him. Don't even do it. And the father's saying, what's wrong with this? I'm right there. I can catch him. And when the child, and of course, they know the child has what strength they have, and this is something that happens just about every father-child relationship, where they let the child experiment. They see how difficult it is. They learn the danger. They know when they get scared, and the father there is then there to protect them. It's teaching that trust aspect in others and also in their parents, but the child gets to do that adventure. And it's just a dynamic that plays out. So three great commercials, and I was just really, really excited to see those happen with the Super Bowl. Okay, we're going to talk about what I did this week at the legislature, and there's so many bills and that relate to family, relate to the judiciary. Well, actually, there's very few that relate to the judiciary, and there's basically no accountability in our judicial branch. And so I went down to the legislature passing out this flyer, and I'll read it to you. Just a black and white flyer, little information, but it's about a judge that for 3 years did not sign her oath of office, Carolyn Lennon. And I was actually at the trial last Friday, of the man that exposed this and told her she had not signed her oath of office. Understand this man was arrested for domestic violence, which he claims was false. Was accused of hitting his wife in the eye and then knocking a cell phone out of her hand, which he says was being used as a camera at the time. And he says he never did it. But interesting, he was arrested by a police officer who never signed or gave his oath of office, who the police chief then, my understanding is, added more charges, who never signed or gave his oath of office. And then he goes in front of a judge who never signed or gave their oath of office. And what is interesting in this, what I hand out is just laid out, do judges have to have oaths of office? And what happens if they don't? And what's going on here? So I was more down there asking questions. And each representative kind of has a different take or a different way in dealing with people. But under the U.S. Constitution, it says members of the several state judicial officers of the several states shall be bound by oath or affirmation. It says a lot more in there, but I'm just giving you the language that talks about state judges have to give an oath of office, the judicial officers of the several states. Fascinating piece, good information. But then you go and look in the Minnesota Constitution, and it says, and I didn't have anything in the Minnesota Constitution about judges having to give an oath of office because there is nothing. And I pointed out to them, and I says, you as a legislator, you have to sign an oath of office and give an oath of office. And and that's in the Constitution. The governor also has to sign an oath of office, and anybody in the executive branch. That's police officers, that's sheriffs, county commissioners. Anybody that's an executive branch person has to sign an oath of office and give an oath of office. But there's nothing in the Constitution that says the judge has to, except when you come to Minnesota Statute 351.02 dealing with vacancies. Okay, in the vacancies, every office shall become vacant on the happening of either of the following events. Okay, and then there's a preferential phase. I just said that wrong. Anyway, before the expiration of the term of such office. Okay, but you read the whole thing. I kind of shortened it here. 3 of those events for an office becoming vacant is 1, death. 2, retirement. 3, moving out of the district. 4, resigning. The 6th one here is the incumbent's refusal or neglect to take the oath of office, or to deposit or file such oath or bond within the time prescribed. Okay, now that applies to judges. So because the Constitution, U.S. Constitution, judges have to take an oath, with this vacancy statute saying everybody, the office becomes vacant for every office, therefore judges fall under this vacancy requirement. What was interesting, I was talking down there and I explaining, this man went through every avenue of the court. He contacted the Attorney General. I got the statute laying here that the Attorney General may bring a cause of action against anyone based on information of a private person that has reason to believe somebody's usurping the office or intruding or unlawfully holds or exercises any public office. So the statute lays out the Attorney General may do something, but the Attorney General is refusing to do something. And we have the Board on Judicial Standards. The Board on Judicial Standards refused to do something in this case. They said something to the effect, I couldn't find the letter today, but I remember somewhat reading it, that this matter is a criminal matter and we don't handle criminal matters. Well, the county attorney isn't dealing with it. The Attorney General is not dealing with it. Here you got the Board on Judicial Standards saying it's a criminal matter. It's interesting. So that's what I laid out and said, I don't know what to do. What I would like is research. And so within the first couple meetings, well, actually I went to my representative, Peter Fisher, a DFL man. And of course, I'm Republican, so I'm just laying out these distinctions here. And Peter Fisher, whenever I've talked to him, been to his meetings, always open, always listening, disagree with him a great deal, but he said he would take it to the research department of the House, and they would look into that issue, oaths of office for judges and consequences. So that's being worked on. With that, I was able to go over to the Senate side, and I talked to Senator Hall, and he's going to have the Senate research do research over there. And I think that's a good thing. The other thing, just a kind of why I went to Peter Fisher, because he's my representative. Doing the research was his idea. from what I remember, although that's something I really wanted, he's in the minority party, he's got more time. That's just the way it works. Although they're busy, he just has more time because he can't really push anything that the Republicans don't want him to push. Same on the Senate side, the Republicans are in the minority, so the Republican senators have more time to do researching and looking into things. So with that being done, I met with probably 11 legislators, all good conversations, but a couple of them came up with the idea of putting a bill together that would just make it in law. We already got the court saying things about judge de jure, judge of the day, a de facto judge, whether their orders count even though they weren't officially the judge, and so the court has ruled, and even in the Carolyn Lennon case, even though for 3 years she didn't sign her oath of office, all her orders stand. That's my interpretation of what the Supreme Court ruled and the appellate court. But they refused to rule on whether her office was vacated, even though that was a question before them. They would not answer it. It's just terrible, and that's the deceitfulness of our judicial branch and the games they play to not deal with holding each other accountable. They only go after people they want to go after. When they find an issue that they don't want to deal with, they throw it away. And that happened here. Well, the legislature is on notice. So everybody got received well. Some don't have time, some do. You got to figure out how to present the information. But that's what I did this week. And in that, we got the idea of having a bill to define these terms so people know exactly what they are. We also got a bill that's going to be introduced on parental rights. And so I got a lot of work to do on this. I got to get my people going on it. And I'll update you on other bills that are going to happen in the future. But I want to give you a heads up on some bills that have already been heard in the House that relate to family law. And of course, this show is about family law and judicial accountability. A very interesting law here that has heard and been passed, and there was very, very little discussion. House File 260, let's bring up that next graphic. Here's a list of all the bills that are have gone through the Civil Law Committee in the House or are ready to go through the Civil Law Committee. And the first one, House File 260, is John Lash, Peggy Scott, and you're going to see Scott on all of these bills. But only House File 260 has a Senate File 73 with Newman, Latz. Of course, those are big players on the Senate side. But House File 260 deals with, it's relating to family law, establishing and modifying the Uniform Deployed Parents Custody and Visitation Act, amending Minnesota statutes, and proposing coding for new laws as Minnesota statutes. What this is basically doing is saying there was a problem when a deployed soldier had custody of their child, and in order to go overseas, they were forced to give up custody. The courts were giving up their full custody, and then any familiar relationships they had were all of a sudden terminated. So if there are stepchildren that these kids have been around for years, and then the custody goes to the non-custodial parent, that non-custodial parent was then just cutting out the other family members and not being able to see the kids. This bill changed that. Very good bill. And I also want to describe briefly how all these bills have come out of a working group that started with Governor Data appointed, that started with his pocket veto, the last bill of the year 2 years ago, where a bill was to change one word from 25% presumption to a 35% presumption of parenting time for the non-custodial parent. Passed the House and Senate almost veto-proof, almost, but then he pocket vetoed it, meaning that there wasn't enough time to veto and to bring it back to the legislature because the session has ended. A cruel trick that, you learn lessons when you go through this process. You don't always figure out everything ahead of time, but some of the senators really took it to us. And we just didn't, you got to know procedure, and we didn't see that one coming as far as the timeline goes. So in other words, a lot of people knew it would get pocket veto, so they voted for it, type of thing. Quite a game. And so, but in that process, the legislators lay down their cards. They let you know where they're standing, and their hand has been forced. And you find out who is in that process. And I'm going to tell you, on this Bill 260 in the Senate side, there's no friends on that bill. The fact that it's military, that may do it. But as far as reforming family law, keeping good parents in the lives of children, I don't think Newman's the guy. I don't think Glatz is either. I hope they prove me wrong in that statement. Well, we got five other bills. House File 446 has no Senate bill, but Representative Mahoney, DFL, Peggy Scott, Republican. This is to change income tax dependency exemptions, not to change them, but allowing exemptions in child support matters, amending the statutes to make it so that this issue is more peaceful. And this comes out of that task force that I recall. All these bills come out of this task force. What this task force of 20 people is basically 10 on one side, 10 on the other. And Governor Dayton said, you guys get together, discuss this family law stuff. Whatever you guys agree on, if you can get it through the House and Senate, I'll sign it. And what was really interesting in this, for years, we've been accused as the associations I've had has been accused as a father's rights group. We're not. We're a parental rights group. We've been accused of that. We get accused by the feminists, the domestic violence industry, as being only about the money. So this whole thing started to deal with custody and good parents remaining in the life of the children. And the majority of the issues that came out of this custody group was about money, because that's the way the domestic violence industry pushed it. Now, I wasn't in on any of these meetings. I'm just looking at the bills. I'm going money, 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 money. And although these are good changes that needed to take place, the domestic violence industry would only deal with the money issues. And even then, my understanding, they were trying to walk away from the table and not agree to any of these. So, in my opinion, these were all attempts to dismiss the process, to dismiss us with these false allegations. Of course, the domestic violence industry knows about false allegations, and they'll use them to their advantage. It was and I see them walking away as just a way to sabotage the whole thing. And then they made it all about the money, is my understanding. But there were changes that need to be made, and if that's what they agreed upon, great. But these were good changes. So House File 451, which is by Lane and Scott, Representative Lane, DFL, Peggy Scott, Republican, modifying provisions related to the effect of a recognition of parentage, making change to the recognition of parentage form, modifying the definition of obligor. So a lot of changes, making it better for a person who does recognition of parentage and giving them some more rights in that process. And also, there's a lot of false allegations that go out in recognition of parentage where a woman will say, well, you're the father. Well, it may not be so. Okay, just because she says you are doesn't mean that you are. And it's amazing the laws that have been out there that if you have DNA evidence that it's not you, because you signed that recognition of parentage, you're it. Even if you do it very, very quickly, and it just doesn't matter for the money and the domestic violence industry. They just don't care. We don't care if it's true or not, if you've been lied to or not. So, interesting dynamic. This bill gives a little more protection. I don't think it's all the way there. None of these are all the way there, but it's a step in the process, and you got to take what you can get in light of a divided Congress or divided legislature this year. But even the year before, or 2 years before, it was divided when we got things done, but we couldn't get things done in the Democrat-controlled House and Senate. So now that this process has gone through, Governor Dayton is back in as governor, and we got a divided legislature. Things are happening. It's just interesting. The dynamic took place. Take advantage of it. House File 464, requiring notice of certain rights, modifying interest rate adjustments on family court actions, making them fair, giving good notice. Just some basic notifying school officials about rights to access and being able to receive information from schools and give information. And I mean, the trouble that people have dealing with schools and the ability of these school administrators to not want to read the court orders and don't care what the court orders say is amazing. So this helps a little with that. And finally, 465 by Representative Scott and Representative Norton. This is changing best interest standards, making technical changes, and adding a couple issues on the best interest of the child standard. And it actually makes it better that, part of the problem with the best interest of the child is you can have two families. And so here's family A, and you got a mother and father, and let's say both these parents are better than family B, okay? But because of the way our laws are set up, if you're going to end up being the non-custodial parent in family A, you're going to get less time than the custodial parent in family A, even though you're a better parent with your child. And that's just not right, So this attempts to deal with some changes in there. And then finally here, House File 512, which is by Representative Norton and Representative Scott. Computation of child support obligation, changes in there, and then they have a whole graph of a percentage of parenting time, and there's a presumption that the percentage of parenting time means the percentage of time a child is scheduled to spend with the parent during a calendar year according to the court order. And this presumption may be rebutted by evidence showing that the parties have actually adhered to a parenting time schedule with a substantially different parenting time. So in the beginning, the court sets out, here's your parenting time, but in actuality, it ends up being different. This makes it easier to go back in and say, no, here's the real parenting time, and let's make the adjustments, and this does that. So it just makes things simpler, more responsive, more reactive, so overall, I think they're good bills, and it's heading in the right direction. Okay, well, fireworks at Grant. Oh boy. I'm going to start with the last one first there, Dallas. The reason is, well, first of all, I'm going to make this offer to the city of Grant for free. I will come in and explain to you, and we will do practice workshops on Robert's Rules of Order. Nobody on that committee knows Robert's Rules of Order or how to do them. It is unbelievable. This is chaos in that city. They think they pass things in that city when they call the question. They call the question and they pass it, the question gets called, so they're going to stop the discussion. And then they never vote on the motion that's before the committee. And so they don't pass it. It's just unbelievable. And so they think they pass this motion that never gets passed. Now, I think it's wise on part of the council members to not bring that to their attention because they're against a majority of these motions. So, that may be wise there. But here's my offer. I will teach for free so that you at City of Grant can have an intelligent discussion and so that we can have a workshop and just go through the process of what it means, okay, and how you relate to each other and how it should be done. I mean, they don't even get their agendas approved. They don't get their consent agendas approved. Oh man, it's bad. All right, so we have this video here, and this is the very end. They're going to censure Larry Lanoux because they said he did something he shouldn't do. However, another city council member did the very same thing, only they're not censoring him. In other words, a file was taken out of the city by Jeff Huber, and it happened to be the file of Larry Lanoux. That was taken out of the city, but if Larry Lanoux takes his own file, they call him on the carpet and saying he can't do it, but somebody else, another city council member can. This is bizarre. So here's the part where they're passing the motion to censor Larry Lanoux. Let's watch what happens.
I make a motion that we pass this resolution, that we have resolution 2015, and I don't know what would be the number, Kim? We don't know, whatever it is. I make a motion, we pass this.
I second.
Point of order.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Censure
I need a second.
You do not have the right.
All those in favor say aye.
You do not have
We're
the
adjourned.
right to censure until I've had the opportunity to speak. See, you don't follow process. You're the.
All right. Anybody that's seen Robert's Rules of Order knows that this is, as one friend told me, boy, the train just steamrolled right through there. Here's the deal. A motion was made. It was seconded. After motions are made and seconded, you have to allow for discussion. There was no discussion allowed. And if you would see through the other parts of the hearing, the city council meeting, that was happening too. No discussion was allowed. Unbelievable. That is just wrong by all measures. Larry Lanoux, once the motion was done and seconded, called for a point of order. When he calls for a point of order, the mayor has to stop and recognize him. Has to do it. But the mayor ignored him, did the vote, even though Larry called for a point of order, and then the mayor goes and does a motion to adjourn while the point of order is being called. Unbelievable that took place. Let's just go to the one before that. Let's see what that's about.
Get off under the planning commission, please. Thank you.
Well, that's exactly what we are talking about, because as we put more tighter restrictions, and we do this, these are items that should have been in front of the planning commission. Now, if I go back to the Grant City workshop, and I was asked for a tape of
Larry,
that earlier.
we're not going to talk about the planning commission. At some point, the planning commission
Sir,
will come
this
back. We've
is
all
about, okay,
we've
then
all
I'll
said
go
that
back
up here.
into home occupation strictly. What we're talking about is we put more restrictive home occupations on our citizens. And in the past, it's been explained that we have kind of gray areas that we have, and they're intentionally done that so that we don't have to go out and persecute our citizens, so that they're not, so tight. I mean, now, recently, I've been brought up because they said at the last city council meeting I needed a conditional use permit. And what I'm saying, if you put a more restrictive deal, our city council will use those tools against the citizens to persecute them. I gave the explanation of why when Mr. Huber came up at my first meeting here at a city council meeting, and I said, I have land that's...
Larry, are we talking about home use occupation here, or what are we doing
Absolutely,
now?
we're talking about the abuse of process here. What I'm saying is
We're
that...
trying to do the process, Larry. Abusing
I
process,
understand you're trying
I
to do
think
the
is
process,
what
but I'm
you're
telling
doing
you,
right now.
have you read section 24
Yeah,
of your
yeah.
book?
Yeah.
Because I would like to read it. It says...
No, you're not. If it has to do with home...
It is to do with home occupation. It says the planning commission shall have the duty to
Larry.
review, study, and make
Larry,
recommendations
that's
to the
about the
city.
planning commission.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, we're not talking
We should be in
about
front
the
of the planning
Larry,
commission.
we don't have a planning commission right now. We're filling in for
Exactly,
that.
Nick,
Yeah.
I need point of clarification. I have the floor. Nick, I would like a
Excuse
point
me?
of clarification
I
from
can
our
take the floor
attorney.
away from you if you will not talk about home occupation, please.
I will not be talking about home listen.
Okay, then we're gonna move on.
Listen, what I'm talking about is home occupation directly. I need a point of clarification from our
You
attorney.
can have one point of clarification, and then if you want, sit down.
Nick, on April 17th,
All right, bring
you
it
had a
back to
city
me.
workshop.
Is this?
All right, it just gets worse from there. Larry Lanou asked a point of clarification to talk to the attorney. The mayor said, you can have one, and then he takes it away from him. He's a city council member. He can talk to the attorney anytime he wants. Well, in the diagrams of the conversation, but he was right there to ask for it, and he is a city council member. He gets an answer from the city council's council. Unbelievable. There was a lot more. Hey, remember, if you don't stand up for other people's liberties, who's going to stand up for yours? And good men don't do nothing. God bless. Have a great week.
You said to me that you wouldn't leave, but now I see that you're lost.